Guess we're live, Adam.
Yeah, I hope so.
On the deeper dive, Adam.
Yeah, Lofty.
Hey, are you feeling alive, Adam?
No, man, I feel dead. The slate is
Oh, good.
awful. Writing the article today was miserable. Not. I'm more excited about the Browns game tonight than I am about baseball.
Oof. Yeah, that says a lot. I mentioned to you, I just love watching the Browns because they find exciting, unique ways to lose every single week, and you don't see
Yeah,
that very often. Or well, I should say, unique ways to not win, like tying the Steelers, like blowing that lead after a huge bomb to Higgins and missing several field goals. You just can't beat it, man. It's a good time. I'm gonna watch this game. I'm kind of excited to see what Darnold does and Quincy Enunwa if he can keep it up and just watch the Browns dump all over themselves again because they're so good at it.
yeah. Did you see there's bars in Cleveland that are like setting up GoPros to capture the celebration when they supposedly beat the Jets?
Yo, that's gonna end well.
Yeah,
Best Buy is going to have a long, long list of return or a long
right.
return line the next day when they all return those GoPros. But um, yeah, it'll be remotely entertaining. Do you think more than 40 total points are scored?
No, no, more than 40. Yeah,
More than 40? I'm going to say no. I'm saying like 20 to 17.
yeah.
I'm
Like
guessing.
I would say somewhere. My guess would have been somewhere around like 42 or 43.
All right. Well, we'll see, I guess. Definitely going to watch it. Three fellas talking football, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Definitely want to tune in for that. Myself, Ben Rasa, and Andrew Barron. And then Josh Engelman and EMAC coming up after us to lead you up to lock. That's right, Josh and EMAC. And then following that, three fellas talking football from like 7 to 8:15 leads you up to the Thursday night game. We'll hit on all that. We'll give you all your first look info. Well, maybe not first look, but a lot of preliminary stuff and a deep dive in the stats for the Sunday slate as well for week 3 of football. Adam, before we kick this off with game by game analysis, you were talking in Slack chat a bunch today about how the tournaments have gone the last few days in terms of winners. Go ahead and just kind of recap what you were saying about how stacks have not, because Josh and I touched on it earlier, but we were kind of just um, kind of paraphrasing what you said. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just in DraftKings in particular tournaments. I think it's an interesting strategy to consider not stacking this time of year for a couple of reasons. We've seen it be successful lately, but it makes sense because with expanded rosters and with so many teams now having an idea where they're positioned in the playoff race, for winning teams, it's more important to just get through the next 2 weeks healthy. And for young teams, they kind of want to see as many guys as they can. So what you kind of see happen is when a team has a game in the bag and, the seventh, eighth, ninth inning, they're kind of just emptying their bench with either defensive replacements or with pinch hitters as like the middle of their order comes up for the final time. And it does cap your upside, with stacks, obviously. Like a lot of times where you would be at, 200 points, the team that ends up winning a tournament ends up having like a big top of the ninth or bottom of the eighth or whatever from their stack to put them over the top. But you're not getting those at bats because teams have so many bodies on their bench that they can go to. And then also because of the expanded rosters, teams have, huge bullpens. So it's easier for them to match up with hitters, left on left later in the game. It's easier for them to bring in, young guys who maybe aren't that good, but who are, really hard throwers and are tough to hit for an inning at a time. So I think that makes it a little bit harder to get, the full upside out of your stacks as well. And when you factor in that basically everyone in MLB DFS stacks now, going the other way this time of the year, I think gives you maybe some added upside while also giving you, unique roster construction just because you're doing something different. So it's something I'm planning on doing the rest of the year. I definitely wish I had actually started doing it earlier, but I think it makes sense. On DraftKings, like FanDuel, the scoring is different, so you get it's more important to correlate your lineups on FanDuel, but on DraftKings fantasy draft, you're basically home run hunting anyway. So I think mini stacking and kind of just going the one-off route and mix and matching the top plays on the slate makes a lot of sense, especially if you're making a lot of lineups. The one exception would be game stacks. I think still make sense because I mean obviously if you get a 10 to 8 game or something, nobody's pinch hitting, nobody's bringing in all their backups, as long as both teams go off.
All right, then. You heard it there. We'll get into it now and break these games down. Adam, you had the the deep dive today. We will certainly get some of your references from there throughout today's show. Josh and I did the process show, dove into it a little bit, not as much game by game, but you also had the strategy show that came on before with Josh and Jake. So a lot of content to digest, and we're going to help you round it out now. And then, of course, the show following us live before lock. All right, Adam, let's do it. Obviously, we know that Scherzer is by far the most expensive player and undoubtedly going to be the highest owned player on this slate, for good reason, no doubt. He is super expensive across the board, as expected, and pulling up projected ownership right now. See if we get a refresh here. Scherzer 46%. So it's come down throughout the day. It was 58, 55. Now it's at 46. But still, that's massive ownership on Scherzer. The thing is, how do you avoid him? It is a team that just allowed Zach Eflin to strike out 9 across 5, and Nola just struck out 9 across 5. They're striking out at an inordinate clip right now, and now you have one of the best pitchers in the league facing them on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, in cash games, there's just no way that I could get away from Scherzer on this slate. He's just in a class by himself. I mean, he has the highest strikeout percentage on the slate by like 8.5 percentage points. Right now, my personal tournament projections have him as the highest scoring pitcher by, I think it's like 11 points or something. So it's really hard to get away from him. I'm pretty comfortable just having him in, all or at least the vast majority of my lineups tonight. If I get in trouble because I played Max Scherzer against the Mets, so be it. But, he's coming off that bad start against Atlanta. I can't find anything real concerning, though. His velocity was fine. Everything looked, pretty decent. It was just a bad matchup against Atlanta. He allowed a 538 batting average on balls in play, which doesn't help anything. His left on base percentage was only 45.5%. There's no real reason that I can see to be concerned about him. He is facing a left-handed heavy lineup. We obviously would prefer that it be a lineup full of righties, but still has a 30.9% strikeout percentage with a 260 WOBA allowed the lefties this year. He's done a better job keeping the ball in the park as well. So there's really no reason that I can find not to play Scherzer here. And if our projected ownership's right, at only around 45% on DraftKings, to me, that's way too low. I mean, this guy's going to be one of the top scoring pitchers on the slate a huge majority of the time here, with compared to the other options, and there only being 7 games. And there is enough value that it's not that difficult to get him in, especially because of how many cheap SP2s there are. So if I do cap him, it's going to be probably somewhere around like 80%. That's about the point where if I actually thought his ownership was going to be 75, 80%, I would start considering cutting a bunch of my exposure and hoping he has a bad game. But at right around 50% projected ownership, I just would much rather be overweight on him.
Now, what about, if you run optimals, there's a very good chance that Detroit bats are going to end up in those optimals. What are you doing about that? Because it sure seems like there's going to be a lot of overlap.
Right. And so one other reason that I'm pretty comfortable, playing a ton of Scherzer is that I'm not stacking, and I know that gives me unique roster construction. I'm not competing with all these other, all the popular stacks that people are going to get from playing Scherzer. So I'm not as concerned about my hitter ownership. That being said, I will limit how much of these Detroit guys I get just because they're not very good. I mean, I like a couple of them. I like the guys with power, but I'm really not interested in having one-offs from, the Tigers that are just bad hitters.
Yeah. And just so many of them do not offer upside. And you could go across the list and you'll find a few of them, sure. But I mean, there's no James McCann. You have Grayson Greiner, Victor Martinez, Jacoby Jones, Jim Beducci. Like, outside of Castellanos, Kristen Stewart, I mean, where's the upside in these bats?
Yeah, exactly. It's a team that I think if they do have upside, it's more in the form of a stack, just because it's going to be a lot of, getting on base, driving guys in. So they're more valuable on FanDuel and more valuable in stack form. And since I'm not stacking and I expect that these guys are popular, I'd like to just, find other cheap guys, maybe not in, maybe not that are even necessarily much better, but that are at least lower own because these Detroit guys, for the most part, aren't good hitters. And Jorge Lopez isn't a terrible pitcher. So that's a spot where you're going to see a bunch of these guys be popular for basically no reason.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Lopez has shown that he's not that bad. We'll get there in a little bit. On the other side, though, you have Jason Vargas. Jason Vargas has actually looked pretty good recently, outside of blow up outing against the Dodgers. But I mean, how much do you buy into it? We like 86-mile-per-hour fastball guy that throws a lot of changeups. The changeup is good. I'll give him that. But I mean, this is a Washington team that can really take it to right-handed or left-handed hit pitchers like Rendon and Zimmerman in the middle. Juan Soto against lefties this year has been very solid. Are you on the Nats bats today?
Yeah, I'll be on both sides of this one. Vargas, I can't really figure out anything he's doing that's significantly different than he was earlier in the year. I wrote about it in the article today. For a lot of the season, I was saying that I thought Vargas was much better than his results. He's actually had some pretty impressive numbers this year when you look at leaderboards for called strike plus swinging strike percentage. He's got that good changeup you mentioned. So I thought that he was too in tournaments just because other people aren't going to do it. And I think that the best way to construct my lineups is with Scherzer and a cheap pitcher. So I'll have some Vargas just for that reason. But then on the other side, I do really like the Nats here. You mentioned Soto has hit lefties really well. Bryce Harper is perfectly fine against lefties. Vargas is not dominant against them either. So it's not a spot where I'm overly concerned about going to the lefties. You have Anthony Rendon, who's just one of the best hitters against left-handed pitching. Ryan Zimmerman's phenomenal as well. And then at the top of the order, you have two guys that can run with Victor Robles and Trey Turner hitting in the top two spots. Jason Vargas he grades out as an average pitcher at holding runners. He's allowed 9 stolen bases in about 79 innings this year. But Kevin Plawecki behind the plate for the Mets has thrown out just 10 out of 60 potential base stealers. He's allowed 50 stolen bases this year. In part, I'm sure that can be attributed to catching Steven Matz and catching Noah Syndergaard, who cannot hold anyone, but that's still really, really bad. And guys like Robles and Turner that have the kind of speed they do are not going to have trouble running against him if they can get on base. So I do really, really like the Nats here. I just will have some Vargas exposure as well.
All right. Yeah, I like the Nats as well. I liked them a lot last time they faced Vargas, and he went 6 scoreless with 8 strikeouts and 3 hits. That son of a bitch.
I think I had 100% Nat stacks that day or something like that. It was something insane where like every lineup I had at least a couple of Nats in it.
I hear you, man. I had a lot too. Honestly, how could you? Like, it's just a good spot. Yeah, Vargas has been a lot better lately, but this team is good against lefties. I guess the way I see it is anything can happen here for sure, and Vargas could continue to pitch well. But if I had to take one side of this, Adam, if I was said, okay, you're playing one lineup, you have to have either Nats bats or Vargas. There's no way I'm going Vargas. I just couldn't. I'd have to side with the Nats here.
Yeah, obviously.
Well, some people may feel different. I'm just Nationals on the year. Look, they're top 6 in WOBA against lefties, top 10 in ISO. The numbers are solid. So yeah, I'm on the Nats. By the way,
I'm trying to pull it up now. Oh, it looks like I was just interested. You'd mentioned the cheap Tigers hitters. Adrian Sanchez, batting 8th for the Nats, he had 10 stolen bases at AAA this year. Yeah, so he's cut back his running a lot from when he was younger, but I still think he should be able to run in the spot. If you're looking for like a
only allowed 1 stolen base yesterday, and it wasn't to Jorge Alfaro.
What'd you say?
Amazing. I said Syndergaard only allowed 1 stolen base yesterday, which is amazing, especially because it wasn't to like Jorge Alfaro or Carlos Santana.
Yeah.
It was to Aaron Altair, his 2nd stolen base of the season.
Yeah, sounds about right.
All right, let's move on. By the way, you see FanDuel reversed course. They're paying the guy the $82,000 on the messed up odds.
That's absolutely insane. I don't get it.
Why they'd pay him?
Yeah.
It's funny if they were like an overseas, like if this was Bovada, how many times have you seen Bovada been like, yeah, eat shit, buddy. We messed up. There's no action on it. You don't get paid. Like I've seen that happen.
Oh yeah. It's commonplace with everything. Like it was so clearly a bad line.
Yes. What was it? 750 to 1 when they were down by a point to win.
Yeah. That sounds right. And they had the
something like
ball.
that.
Yeah.
I wish I knew about that. I'd have
Right.
driven straight to Jersey. Yeah, but 82 grand they've decided to pay him. I'm gonna start keeping my eyes out for some bad lines on FanDuel, but I don't think they'll make that mistake again. Anyway, New York Yankees in Boston. Oh God, Adam. Uh, New York Yankees and Boston. Masahiro
Masahiro
Tanaka.
Tanaka. You back?
Did I go out? What happened? Am I out?
You're here. Adam's gone.
Oh, that son of a bitch
Adam's
acting like it was.
on his way back.
So I'm still connected.
Yeah,
Right.
I haven't lost your face at all.
Well, then I think we just need to start blaming all of the problems that we run into on Adam from now on.
Reasonable stance.
Yeah. Well, oh my God. Now we're both fucking gone, aren't we? Oh God.
You're there. Everything's fine on my end. I have you
YouTube
crystal clear on my screen. He's just a spinning dial. So
I'm
while
watching.
Adam, the connecting spinning dial, waits to get back in here. Where were you at? I'll tag back in.
Oh, all right. It looks like I'm back on. All right. You going to talk with me? All right.
I'm here.
You and I discussed this a little bit earlier today, Yankees and Boston. Masahiro Tanaka, Eduardo Rodriguez, and then if you're just looking at like projected ownership right now on awesemo.com, Tanaka's up to 11%. So it's not like he's going entirely overlooked like we thought he would earlier in the day. Looks like, there's still a portion of people that are like, yeah, I think this guy's good enough to where I can take a stab and hope that he does have a monster game again.
Yeah, he's a guy that I'm probably not getting enough. And it's sort of just the way that I'm constructing my hitters today. I like him more on paper than I do in terms of the way that I'm getting him in lineups. And that's a really stupid thing to say because nobody can really take any value out of that. I can't say that I like him and then subsequently don't play him. So I guess in theory I don't like him, but it's just because I don't want to play very specific chalky bats, and that's just pulling me away from him. I have so much of like the garbage pitchers today. It's really making me nervous.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess really when it comes down to it, Scherzer is in a spot where a little bit. So yesterday, I had a lot less Carrasco in favor of Bueller, but that wasn't number one because I didn't like Carrasco. I did, but I loved Wheeler too. Bueller. And with that, it's like they were basically the same price. Both of them had very good matchups. Just one of them was going to be significantly higher owned. In this case, it is different. Tanaka's cheaper, but Scherzer's matchup really is that much better. So I'm not blaming anyone, and I'll probably do the same to just say, you know what, this seems like a night where I should probably just eat the chalk and go heavy Scherzer. Even in tournament.
And I have 50% of Scherzer on DK, which is basically right in line with our ownership. I basically don't have any Tanaka. I am double the field on the Red Sox, though, hitter-wise.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I'm just, more than anything, I'm just looking at it like I want to play the bats that aren't being played. So I've got a ton of Yankees. I've got a ton of Red Sox. It wouldn't shock me at all if one of those teams blows up. There's so much hitting talent on both sides. I'm just making a bet on bats that aren't being owned because Max Scherzer's expensive.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just it's such an elite spot. If Scherzer went for 50 here, I wouldn't be wildly surprised. So I think Boston's interesting too. But again, it's one of those spots, we talk about these all the time, where you could see Tanaka tossing a gem, or you could see Boston winning someone a tournament. That simple.
Adam thought that you dropped off. He just told me that he's been talking to himself for 2 games. I totally agree with what you just said, though.
Oh my God, that's amazing. He went 2 games on his own.
He said, "Oh, okay, I've been talking to myself for 2 games."
Oh my God. What did he ask you, if I was back yet or something?
Well, I messaged him. I was like, I don't know what happened to your connection, but like I've got you covered. Like he and I are He and I were just talking.
God, that's too good.
And I think he's just been like, well, I guess Laffy's gone, so Indians and Royals or whatever. But I don't know why he wasn't like. I don't know why he didn't try to prompt me. Do you think that we both were gone?
Oh my God, that's incredible. Oh, I wish I could have witnessed that. That would have been a pleasure. What about Erod and the Yankees, this spot here? Because we haven't really talked about that. I don't know if I've really any interest on either side of this one.
So I actually think that Erod is the guy that's slipping through the cracks here today.
I think you're right. I think you're right there.
I have Tanaka and Erod with the exact same chances of being a top 2 scoring pitcher on DK, and you get Erod at $1,600 less and half of the ownership. He would be the guy that I would try to make that weird, like if I'm not playing Scherzer, I would go to Erod and leverage his ownership. At the same time, like I said before, I'm basically just going Scherzer and all of the garbage at the bottom. So it's not part of my construction. But just from like the way that my model breaks out, Erod seems like the guy that's more underrepresented in ownership than Tanaka. And right. Adam, welcome back, maybe?
Yeah, what's up, guys?
So how many games did you get through?
I crushed the Yankees game. I was partway through the Tampa Bay Toronto game.
Oh, that's incredible. Why don't you go ahead, because Josh and I just discussed it, but why don't you just go ahead and tell me where you're at on the Yankees in Boston, because you already got 2 sides to this. A third one can't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm not going to end up with either pitcher. I think if you were taking a stronger stand than I am and fading Scherzer, that either one's reasonable. I would lean toward Tanaka just because I think he's the one that has the ceiling that can approach Scherzer. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, getting swinging strikes and getting chases out of the zone. It's obviously a really, really bad matchup, and he's not at much of a discount. But I kind of think Erod's overpriced too. I do agree with Josh on the ownership. It is appealing on Erod, but if I had to go between the two, I think it would be Tanaka. But that being said, I don't plan on going to either one. I think that Rafael Devers is interesting as like a lower owned pivot from some of these Detroit guys, because he does actually get a ballpark upgrade here going from Fenway to Yankee Stadium for left-handed hitters. We know Tanaka will give up home runs, so I think Devers is actually a pretty good one-off play. And obviously, I don't mind the Yankees, power, but I'm not really prioritizing anything else.
All right. Yeah, I guess we're all on the same page with this then. I don't disagree either with what Josh said, but just because of Tanaka's ceiling, if I was pivoting, it's knowing that Tanaka could give you 40 fantasy points in any start. Tough start, though. Tough matchup, no doubt about it. Tampa Bay and Toronto, Adam. We have I'm getting so sick of seeing Ryan Stanek's name every single day in the player pool. It's really outrageous. I mean, Yanni Chirinos looking like he's going to be the long man here. He's gone 5 1/3, 6 1/3, 7 innings, 5 innings, 5 innings, 6 innings, 5 innings, 5 innings, 3 innings, 6 2/3 over his last 10 outings. So, you're looking at around an average of, above 5, under 6 innings, maybe 5.5 innings there. That's good to see that Kevin Cash is actually letting him go here. Pitch count 94, 89, 72, 81. And the only reason it was 72, my guess, is because he pitched 7 innings, so he went through the 8th, and I guess they were in Toronto, so yeah, they had someone come in and close that one out, even though it was 7-1. So he does have a leash here. What are your thoughts? You probably already talked about it, but let's let everyone else hear
it. Yeah, I mean, it's nice that we've actually seen him consistently pitch 5+ innings. He's done it 8 starts in a row, and in the 9th start, it was the start against Baltimore where he went 3 innings, but it was because he pitched absolutely awful. He just got pulled early based on effectiveness. So we have at least seen some consistency there, which is nice. Obviously, still only a play on DraftKings because he can't get a quality start if he doesn't start the game. But I do think that he's a pretty reasonable option. He's been pretty splits neutral against lefties and righties, striking out about 19.5% of lefties, about 20% of righties. 305 WOBA allowed the lefties, 311 to righties. It's not a bad Toronto lineup, but it's not a great one either. It is a negative park shift for Chirinos going into the Rogers Center in Toronto. not in love with him, but not in love with any of these cheap arms, and he's no riskier than anyone else. So I will have him mixed in plenty here, and hoping for
Not
the
a bad,
best.
like
What'd you say?
I said, and Torino's is not a bad pitcher. Like he's pretty
No,
all right.
no, not at all. I do think there's some value though in Toronto bats with like Billy McKinney at 3,500, Gurriel at 38, Rowdy Tellez at 39. I do
Meatball
think
face.
you can go there for value.
Meatball face, you mean?
Yeah, him.
Just want to make sure everyone knows who he is. Yeah, Rowdy Tellez batting 5th today. Smoke back in the lineup. What a damn travesty he's been. My Lord. This dude has been just complete and utter garbage at the plate recently. And it's really a shame because Justin Smoke, for years, a perennial value provider. And now you see his price tag jack up and he just really disappointing over the last, I don't know how long. Some really good matchups too. I mean, yesterday, seeing this game conclude, what was it, 2-1 or something? It's just brutal, Adam. That one with Yacobonis and Estrada going with really good starts. Who would have thought?
Yeah, Yacobonis had his one good start of the season where like he has good stuff, but if you watch the guy pitch, he's just all over the place with his mechanics, and he had his one start where he was able to actually throw strikes.
Yep, I really like that Toronto lineup too. They just fit so nicely. But no dice. Any other hitters here that you like? Because on the other side, we talked about Stanek, we talked about Chirinos. You have Gavilio on the other side. Gavilio, if one thing, he's been just markedly better at home this year. You also have projected ownership on him around like 13% we're seeing right now. There's definitely going to be some ownership at 4,900. What are your thoughts on old Sammy Gavilio?
Yeah, I mean, I'm playing some probably right around that 13% mark just because he is so cheap and it's pretty hard to go wrong with $4,900 pitchers. But I hate the spot. I mean, Tampa Bay's got 7 lefties in this lineup. And while Gavilio has struck out a little over 24% of righties with a 52% ground ball rate, he has struck out 15.5% of lefties with only a 42% ground ball rate. Woba allowed up around 360. So, and it's a positive park shift for the Tampa Bay hitters. Malik Smith's in a good running spot. Ji-Man Choi gets, increased home run upside hitting in Toronto. Same for, obviously everyone, but they actually do have some left-handed power in this lineup. So if I were stacking, Tampa Bay would actually be one of my favorite stacks. Even taking one-offs, I do like quite a few of these guys. Smith, Choi, Pham, Lau, Kiermaier, Bowers. I think there's a lot of different ways you can go in this Tampa Bay lineup.
All right. Yeah, they're another team that's disappointed a lot recently, but I agree. Really interesting spot here. Gavilio has a strikeout rate that is 10%, almost 10% lower against lefties, and it's been that way all season long. Swinging strike rate, low 8%. Expected ISO of 222 and xWOBA 375. Against lefties, he is not very good, and that is shown. 1.72 home runs per 9. Just it's been a rough go against lefties, and we say it a lot on the deeper dive whenever he's been pitching that Gavilio is actually a pretty enticing tournament play or any play when he's facing a weak righty heavy lineup. But yeah, you have 7 lefties in this lineup. That makes it a lot less appealing. I don't care if some of these guys aren't great, but Malix, Choi, Wendell, Lowe, Kiermaier, Bowers, Chiufo. Is it Chiufo?
I think it's Chufo.
It's got to be, right? With a CI should be pronounced CH, right? I would think so.
Yeah, it's Chuffo or Trufo. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Who cares, right?
We decided to call him Nick C this morning in lieu of
Nick
that.
C. All right. Well, you also call Gavilio Gaviglio, and that's no surprise.
Ouch.
Oh man, they're Italians. Anyway, I'm with you. So that is, it is really a Rays lineup that, with all those lefties, Adam, I'm glad you pointed it out. Like there is some upside in this lineup, and you know what? I'm just pulling this up now because all of their salaries have come down quite a bit. Brandon Lau's gone up actually. Can you play Can you stack them? Because I know you've made some lineups already. Can you stack them with Scherzer and feel all right about it?
I haven't tried. I have my lineups capped at
Open,
3 guys
okay.
from one team.
All right. Well, I'm gonna try and see what I come up with. Who is your highest owned second pitcher?
I just ran a crunch right now, and Cody Reed.
Cody Reed. All right. So I'm gonna plug Cody Reed in, and while we talk, I'll see what I can do. White Sox and Cleveland, James Shields and Josh Tomlin. Oh dear God, that's a beaut. You know, two guys that have finished towards the top of the league or at the top of the leagues in home runs allowed at least some point in their career. Shields, you know, you'd think, all right, well, maybe Shields hasn't been as bad this year. He's maybe potentially, possibly one day this season made some improvements. You know, he's got a mid-4 ERA, which just judging by that alone, one might say, hey, that's not too bad. Well, the thing about Shields, the guy still allows a lot of power. His 31 home runs are the third most in the league. Interestingly, too, when you look at somebody like Josh Tomlin, Adam, you know, you have to filter out so they're not qualified, and then sort by home runs. And amazingly, you know, Josh Tomlin has still, despite not starting since however long ago, and thrown only 59.2 innings, allowed 23 home runs. Just to kind of put that in perspective here, you have guys like, okay, for instance, Jacob deGrom has thrown 202 innings. He's allowed 10 home runs. Tomlin's pitched, what did I say, 53 or so innings, 59, and he's allowed 23 home runs. That is a astronomical number. When like unbelievable that you see something like this. I'm going to turn it over to you here, but I just want to say Josh Tomlin in 2018 is allowing 4.56 home runs per nine to lefties and 2.75 to righties with 13% strikeouts against both. My God.
Yeah, I included that 4.56 homers per nine to lefties in the article today, even though I know the sample size is useless just because it was such an insane number.
Of
But
course.
this is like
he's still 121. At least it's not like he's faced 20. He's faced
right.
120.
Yeah.
But yes, of course, it's not. No way it's sustainable. Agreed.
Right. But I mean, it is worth noting this is a guy that has home run issues every single year because he doesn't strike guys out and he doesn't walk guys. And now, and it makes sense that you would actually see those home run numbers get worse as hitters emphasize hitting home runs more and try and, do so because he just doesn't miss bats. And that's the kind of pitcher that I love taking these White Sox hitters against. Yoan Moncada is one of my favorite plays on the slate because we know Moncada has a ton of power, but what gets in his way is that he strikes out a lot and he walks a lot. He takes too many pitches. He needs to be more aggressive for fantasy purposes. But Tomlin doesn't walk guys. He doesn't strike guys out. He's going to force Moncada to hit the ball, and Moncada has a lot of power when he does that. So I like him. Daniel Palka for all the same reasons. Absolutely love. Obviously, El Garcia, Matt Davidson. Like I don't even mind Narvaez or Anderson. Like there's so many different ways you can go in this White Sox lineup. I think that maybe the 4.1 implied run totals like pretty accurate, but there's still a lot of there's more fantasy upside in like this 4 implied run total than most because it's probably not going to be a bunch of singles and they end up with 4 runs. It's probably going to be like 3 home runs.
Right. Yeah, no, there's just so much upside, honestly, in both sides of this game. Like both sides of this game are loaded with upside. James Shields, away from home this year, and it's weird. Guaranteed rate field really isn't that hitter friendly. And I hate to say it hasn't been this year because it's like, it's the same park, but I don't know. Has it not felt like this year guarantee rate field is not played towards the hitter, at least maybe neutral, but it has not been extreme in either way whatsoever.
Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to it, but
no?
I haven't really looked at the park factor for it this year.
All right. Yeah, I just remember a lot of talk about because it was US Cellular, remember?
Yeah.
And you always hear like, oh yeah, huge home run park. this and that. And honestly, like maybe it is, and maybe I'm just misremembering and I have and I'm just thinking of it wrong. I'm actually looking it up now because I'm curious. Home runs as lefties, White Sox. Yeah, okay. So seventh highest, seventh best for hitters, and then home runs for righties, eighth best. All right. So yeah, no, I'm wrong there. It just hasn't felt like it. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. James Shields outside of guaranteed rate field has been dreadful. Like allowing 60 more WOBA points this season, 2.16 home runs per nine on the road compared to 0.95 at home. A lot more power allowed on the road. Hard hit rate is 10% higher. Line drive rate is 7% higher away from home. Take it for what it's worth. Maybe nothing, but 31 starts in, you start to pay attention to that. And now he faces this Cleveland team that, for all intents and purposes, was garbage yesterday. I don't care about a walk-off Kipnis grand slam when the rest of the team was anemic throughout the entire game. Adam, do you have him bouncing back here against Shields?
It's clearly a high upside spot. I mean, they're at home. They're facing a pitcher in Shields who does allow power to both sides of the plate. My issue is just how expensive they are as a stack. It basically is going to force you off of Scherzer, which I get, it's obviously going to be contrarian to do that. But the problem, I think, is that everyone or a lot of people who don't play Scherzer, it's going to be so they can stack the Indians. So you kind of end up still being somewhat chalky if you do it. I mean, I like going here for one-offs where you can fit them. I think that Encarnacion and Alonso are both good plays. Obviously, Lindor and Ramirez are always good plays. There's no one here that I have as like my favorite guy at their position, but I do think that there's a lot of power upside here, and I like getting to them. It's just that I feel like they're kind of overpriced relative to the rest of the slate, or they're like appropriately priced for the spot at least.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say.
And I don't think Shields is a gas can. I mean, he's not good, but he's also not awful.
No, look, one thing I reference in every show and every article because I think it matters a lot is the home run per nine. Because when we talk about stacks, right, or even like I don't want to say one offs, but two offs. When we talk about pitchers that will like a Chase Anderson, where if I'm playing guys against Anderson, I usually don't stack. Like I'll play a couple of them because he has home run problems, but he's not a terrible pitcher. And there's a lot of guys like that. I think in Shields' case, I wouldn't be surprised to see him not get crushed, but still allow a decent amount of home runs. His home run totals over his last 10, look at this, 3, 2, 1, 2, 0. That's against Kansas City. Then 3, 1, 0, 2, and then 2 again. So multiple home runs in 6 of his last 10 starts. This guy does give up a ton of power. If I'm not playing Scherzer, I can tell you right now, I will have a lot of Indian bats just because I think this could be a spot where Shields gets absolutely tortured.
Yes, so, that definitely makes sense to me.
By the way, on the other side, though, how much do you like? I know you talk about maybe not stacking entirely. How much do you like a White Sox stack here? Because you got like a weak catcher position. You have Narvaez batting 5th, and this guy's actually hitting for a little power lately. You mentioned Moncada, obviously. Palka batting 3rd, Garcia cleanup, Davidson 6th. Any interest in a stack here?
I mean, they would be one of the teams that I would want to stack if I were stacking. But the issue is that kind of like you talked about with Shields, it's pretty similar with Josh Tomlin. I mean, he gives up a ton of home runs, but he's not terrible at keeping guys off base. So I would be more inclined to have 2 and 3 man like mini stacks from the White Sox.
You're right. Yep, Palka, Moncada for me. Maybe Palka, Moncada, Narvaez.
I love Matt Davidson too.
Yeah, Davidson as well. All right, Kansas City, Detroit. Matt Boyd, 9,400 on DraftKings, Adam. That's quite a hefty price point, and he still has projected ownership, above 20% right now. It's whew. And then Jorge Lopez against Detroit. You mentioned that you're going to see a lot of Detroit bats because of Scherzer. Talk to me through this one.
Yeah, so I mean, both pitchers are basically priced out for me. It's a fine matchup for Boyd, but I just can't pay that price tag, especially with him being one of the popular pivots away from Scherzer. I would rather, this is a spot where if I'm going in that price range and I can't quite afford Tanaka, I would rather go Erod at, a 4-1 discount in ownership, because Boyd's just not that great of a pitcher. He's okay. Kansas City's not a great team, but Boyd struck out 21.7% of righties this year. He's allowed 1.2 home runs per nine. He's not an elite pitcher, and he has not been good at holding runners this season. He's allowed 15 stolen bases this year after allowing 7 combined in his previous seasons. Grayson Griner was good at throwing guys out at AAA this year. He struggled in the majors. So I think it's a spot where Merrifield and Mondesi are going to be able to run. I think you can go to guys like Hunter Dozier and Jorge Bonifacio as, lower owned value plays instead of the more popular guys from Detroit. And that's kind of how I'd rather attack this one. I don't have interest in Detroit against Lopez. I think he's a pretty decent pitcher. Kristen Stewart is a nice one-off. He's a guy that I've talked about a couple of times that has a lot of power, and he's still pretty cheap. Nick Castellanos obviously is like always the best play from Detroit. But outside of those two, I'll gladly let everyone else who is just blindly playing optimized lineups take them, while I take lower owned guys from Kansas City, among other teams.
Yeah, I'm with you. Kansas, definitely among other teams. How much interest do you have in Kansas City, though, against Boyd, who, has been pretty decent? I mean, we said it all the way at the beginning of the season that Boyd is not a bad pitcher. He's a pretty talented pitcher. Might not have the greatest upside, but he's pretty strong. Do you have interest in terms of gauging interest against Matt Boyd? Where are you on this? Where's your interest level here?
So when I ran my first crunch just to get an idea of ownership, I capped hitters at 30%, and it was basically spitting out, 30%, Victor Martinez, 30% Ronnie Rodriguez, 30% of just these bad Detroit hitters. I'll take that and, kind of cut it. And I think I'll probably end up with, 10% Hunter Dozier, 10% Jorge Bonifacio, just, kind of mixing these guys in because they do have some upside against Boyd. It's not a great spot, but I think they'll be lower owned than the Detroit hitters as well. And then Merrifield and Mondes, are just good.
Yeah. Have you noticed that this season Boyd has allowed 15 stolen bases after last season allowing 4 in 25 starts. The season before that allowing 2 in 18 starts, 97 innings, and then 1 in 12 starts the year before that. I find that to be pretty interesting here, given that this is not somebody that allowed a ton of speed. No, actually, really allowed nothing in previous seasons. Now this year, he's allowed the 13th most stolen bases. He's caught only 2 runners. And the situation behind the plate doesn't seem to have changed all that much. So yeah, that's a big difference in stolen bases, given that really last year he only threw a few less starts and had way fewer stolen bases allowed.
Yeah, I mentioned at the top that he has allowed more than twice as many stolen bases this year as he has in his entire career before.
Must have missed that.
I thought you were trolling me at first when you were like, have you noticed that he's allowed 15 stolen bases?
No, my fault. I was looking up some stats. But one thing I wanted to see too is what I was asking though more so is, do you have any idea why? Because it doesn't seem like much has changed.
Yeah, my guess is just that it's probably the changes he's made this year to be a little bit more effective have also maybe had something to do with his delivery.
Slowed his delivery or something.
Yeah. I don't have a concrete reason for it, but it's clearly happened.
Last year, not only did he allow only 4, but he caught 6. So, big difference here. Caught stealing rate is 60% last year. So just throwing it out there, this is a much better base stealing matchup than it would have been in the past.
Yeah, and I mentioned it too, but I'll mention it again. Griner at AAA this year threw out 36.5% of potential base stealers, but with Detroit so far has thrown out just 22%. So still not really sure what to make of him behind the plate, but it's not deterring me from guys like Merrifield and Mondesi.
No, not at all. Okay, because we know, that's good about them. Even in a tough base stealing matchup, those guys are running regardless. It doesn't even matter right now.
Yeah, and they both can hit too. I mean, Merrifield's got a 189 ISO against lefties since last year. One of the highest WOBAs on the team.
Yep, for sure. Cincinnati, Miami, Jeff Brigham, and Cody Reed. You said right now he's going to be your highest owned SP2. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, I like both of these pitchers. I mean, like being used loosely, but it's a good park in Miami and not a real dangerous Miami lineup going against Reed. He's a guy that's always flashed some upside. I mean, has around the 23% strikeout percentage at AAA this year in 17 starts. He's made 15 appearances for the Reds, 5 as a starter, 10 out of the bullpen, has around the 23% strikeout percentage. The walk rate has been held in check this year, which is nice because he is someone that struggled with that earlier in his career. So I just think that he has the highest upside out of the dumpster fire of SP2 options that we have on this slate. So he'll be the one that I have the most of. I also expect he'll be the highest owned. So like I'll probably end up being a little bit less overweight on him just because I'm not putting like the majority of my lineups into Cody Reed. But he will be my highest owned out of the cheap SP2s. And then Brigham will be, right behind him just because he's cheap. He's pitching in a good park. The Reds aren't a great offense. I wish it was more right-handed heavy. He, so far in his 2 big league starts, has been a fastball slider guy, which can lead to troubles with opposite-handed hitters. But in the minor leagues, he did strike out about 1 lefty per 9 innings, which is nice. He had a 22% strikeout rate at AAA, walked 6% of hitters. That's good enough for me at 5,100 against a Reds team in Miami, whose implied run total has actually been falling throughout the day as well.
All right, Jeff Brigham. He has not fared well in each of his first 2 starts, but facing a Cincinnati team that I'm not really sure where to stand on a spot like this. Did you, in writing today's article, really have any mention of either side of this?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote up Brigham. I think he'll be my second highest owned out of the cheap SP2s, just because of the park. But I mentioned that he's basically been a fastball slider guy over his 2 starts. He had decent strikeout numbers against lefties in the minors. Also gave up 5 home runs to them in limited at bats. So it's not an easy matchup, but the park is nice. It's not the greatest Cincinnati lineup. I mean, once you get past Suarez, it kind of dies. So I'll take my chances on Brigham here as my second highest owned SP2 behind Reed.
Okay, so you have Reed, you have Brigham, you have Gavilio, and you have Vargas, right? All of them,
and Chirinos
and Chirinos, all of them below 6K. Who are you looking at in terms of preference? Obviously, Reed first, and then is it really just whoever fits, whoever works best, whoever's cheapest?
Reed, Brigham, Chirinos, Gavilio, Vargas.
Okay, so Vargas last.
Well, I've like basically the same Vargas and Gavilio. I have a little bit more Chirinos, I have a little bit more Brigham, and I have more Reed.
All right, and then how about this? On the opposite side of that, knowing that Reed will have some ownership for sure, and my assumption is that Gavilio will have some too. Brigham as well, it's seeming at least. Hell, maybe even Tomlin. Actually, Tomlin definitely will just because it's the White Sox.
Yeah.
Which offenses do you like the most? For me, it's still the White Sox. I don't know about a full stack. Well, no, Washington, then the White Sox, then Tampa Bay, and then really don't really care between like Cincinnati and Miami and Toronto.
Yeah, if we're talking like full stacks, it would be Washington, Tampa Bay, White Sox, Reds. But as far as like one-offs, it would be Washington, White Sox second, Tampa Bay third, then the Reds. But I do think that you can go to these Miami guys too, and you're not in Cody Reed lineups. Like Lewis Brinson at 3,200 is no worse of a play than anyone you're going to name on Detroit other than Stewart or Castellanos.
Rojas is batting leadoff at 3,000 flat.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's projected to have some ownership too, which is really annoying. I mean, he's not good either. But like Peter O'Brien has a ton of power. He's a very flawed hitter, but he has a lot of power. Austin Dean's okay. Castro's okay. Real Muto's, actually a good hitter. Yeah, like I'm fine mixing in these guys as some of the value plays to get away from Detroit as well, because I think that it's just I'll take the lower owned guys here over Detroit guys. I think they're all, pretty mediocre hitters.
Well, also in doing so, not only are you getting lower owned bats over over Detroit, but you're also playing those lower owned bats against who is almost certainly going to be the second highest owned pitcher in Cody Reed.
Yeah, exactly. Like no one's playing Jorge Lopez today. So by playing Detroit bats, you're just playing the same hitters everyone else is playing, and you're not surpassing anyone that has Jorge Lopez. Whereas if you play the Miami bats, you're getting them, most of them at least, at lower ownership than Detroit, and you're passing the Cody Reed lineups when Peter O'Brien hits a grand slam in the first.
So it's a double win there or a double lose, but you're already okay risking that.
Right.
And then with Detroit, it's basically just you better hope that they do really well.
Right. And you don't have to go that high on them. Like kind of like I mentioned with Kansas City, you can kind of just sprinkle these guys in. And because obviously if you're going Scherzer and one of the SP2s, you still need a couple value bats in your roster construction. So by just rotating all these guys through, I can be overweight on, all the Kansas City guys that I'm interested in. I can be overweight on most of the Miami bats that I'm interested in. Whereas to be overweight on, the Detroit guys that are projected at 20%, like I don't want to play 30% Ronnie Rodriguez. Like that sounds
of course
miserable.
not. Right. Look, there's certainly no confidence in rostering these Miami bats, but there's just, in terms of just pure logic, it makes more sense than Detroit and Scherzer lineups. It's that simple.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, like just glancing at projected ownership now, we have Rojas and Rodriguez are around the same, but
what are they at?
Right around 20%. Rodriguez is at like 17. I think Rojas might have been Rojas is at 19.
Okay.
But then, you have Lewis Brinson below 10%, Peter O'Brien, Austin Dean, all below 10%. Whereas if you pull up, my page is running a little bit slow, but if you pull up Detroit, you're going to get, I think, a little bit higher ownership. You have Victor Martinez at 15%, Jacoby Jones at 13%. Like, I will gladly take 2.5 to 1 odds on Peter O'Brien versus Jacoby Jones.
Absolutely. Yeah. There is nothing appealing about Jacoby Jones, at least not over O'Brien. Actually, O'Brien has proven that he's very, very, very capable of hitting for power in very limited sample size. I'll take a guy that has 3 home runs over his last 4 starts at 3,700 at no ownership any day of the week, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm with you. Let's get to the last game here. We'll turn it over to Josh and EMAC live before lock coming up after us. Atlanta and Philadelphia. Kevin Gausman and Vince Velasquez. Velasquez has just looked bad lately. I mean, I don't know what it is. He has not looked good lately. The interesting thing about Velasquez is he strikes more batters out at home, but he also allows more home runs at home, more power. On the road, he's only allowed 4 home runs this season, but hasn't offered as much upside, and it's not an easy matchup against the Braves. And then with Gausman, you never know what to expect from this Phillies team, but pitchers do have a decent ceiling against them in the event that you get the Phillies team we're looking for, and that is the bad one, because they're very unpredictable.
Yeah, I mean, Gausman's my favorite mid-range pitcher here. We talked before his start against Washington, where he was bad, that it seemed like he was trending in the right direction. He's throwing that splitter more, which we've learned over the last couple of seasons correlates very strongly with him pitching well. And even though he wasn't good against Washington, that's a tough matchup. And he did throw, FanGraph splits it, and it basically says he has a changeup and the splitter, even though it's one pitch. But if you combine the usage on FanGraphs, it was up at about 42% in that Washington start. So I'm still taking it as a positive because it seems like they've figured out that he should throw that. Tyler Flowers is not catching him tonight, which is a little concerning because we just know how good of a game caller Tyler Flowers is. And most of those recent games lately where he was throwing the splitter a lot were with him. But it's just a matchup against the Phillies team that has a lot of strikeouts in the lineup. Hopefully he throws that splitter a lot. It has a 25% swinging strike rate against righties this year, 19% against lefties. It leads to him getting strikeouts. So I like Gausman here. I don't think I'll end up with much just because, like Josh mentioned, and like we've talked about a lot, I plan on going a lot of Scherzer and then just mixing and matching bad SP2s. So yeah, but if I got off of Scherzer and dropped to, I don't know, Matt Boyd or something, I could see getting up to Gausman, or even if I'm stacking Cleveland and want good one-offs, going with like Gausman as an SP1 at least does have some upside. He can go out and get you 30 points here, a high enough percentage of the time, I think. So I do like Gausman. I'm not on Phillies bats. Velasquez, it's kind of tempting to me because he's so cheap and he does have that strikeout upside, but he's just struggled so much lately. His strikeout numbers have been so much better at home basically every year.
It's not worth it.
Right, and he's going into Atlanta. It's a team that doesn't strike out. You have Freddie Freeman, who I think is in a phenomenal spot here from the left side. Ronald Acuna is just a really good hitter. I don't think I'll end up with much of him because of his price tag, but it's just such a tough spot to really go to Velasquez here, I think.
Yeah, I just don't think it's worth it. I really don't. I mean, there are better options, cheaper and above him. To me, I don't see the need. Atlanta's a good enough team. It's not even the thing is, it's not even like he's getting a quality matchup here where he can bounce back nicely. To me, there's just too much downside, too much risk. I don't see the worth.
Yeah.
Um, any bats?
Freddie Freeman, and that's about it. Like I have Kurt Suzuki in my pool too, just because he's a catcher and he has some power.
Right. All right, let's do our position stacks and we'll head out. Turn it over to Josh and Emac. Top pitchers, go.
Max Scherzer, Cody Reed, Kevin Gausman.
Yeah, those are mine as well. And then I'm still debating whether I want to get a little bit of Tanaka in there just to be entirely different. But we'll see.
Sorry, to be clear, those aren't my. Gausman's not my third highest owned pitcher. He's just if I'm not playing a ton of Scherzer, he's my third favorite pitcher.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, catcher.
Omar Narvaez, Sal Perez, and JT Realmuto.
All right, yeah, Narvaez, definitely Realmuto, and yeah, I guess Perez too. I think Narvaez is definitely in a good spot here, though. It's hard not to like him. All right, first base. I do like O'Brien quite a bit down there at that price tag. I like Ryan Zimmerman. I think Ji-Man Choi is in a good spot. And then either one of Alonso and Encarnacion. It's a pretty deep position.
Yeah, I like Zimmerman, Choi, and O'Brien. But I like all the guys you mentioned too. It's really deep.
It's deep. Yeah, second base.
Yohan Moncada, Brandon Lau, and Starlin Castro.
All right. Yep. All of the same guys. Ramirez, Castro, Lau. If there's anyone else here that we're missing. Oh, and Moncada. So, yeah, those four guys definitely going to be at the top of the list. Third base, I'll mention Ramirez again here. Matt Davidson. Rendon is probably my favorite play here. I don't blame you if you can't get to him, but he is my favorite third base play.
Yeah, third base kind of sucks because Ramirez and Rendon are so expensive. I like them both if you can get there, but I like Rafael Devers here. I think Suarez's price is really attractive, and I like Hunter Dozier.
All right, shortstop.
Trey Turner is my favorite. You can go to Miguel Rojas leading off. You can go to Lourdes Gurriel. Alberto Mondesi is a good one too.
All right, and I'm definitely have to throw Lindor in there as well. James Shields in terms of stolen bases this year. Do you have it pulled up by any chance? I don't remember the exact number.
He's allowed 17 this year. He's 17. Yeah, he hasn't graded out as positive since 2015. He has been basically around average.
Yeah, he's allowed 17 and he's caught 8. So not bad ratio, but as long as they're running, that's all that matters since you don't lose points for caught stealing anymore. That used to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, that always sucked.
Yeah, I lost 20,000 on that once in the perfect game because I had a caught stealing -2 points, and I lost.
Especially back then because they didn't have the replay either, so there were just so many blown calls costing you points.
Yep, definitely frustrating. Outfield.
Billy McKinney, Kristen Stewart, Bonifacio, Brinson for value. I like Daniel Palka a lot. I love Victor Robles. I like the other two Nats outfielders too. Avi Garcia.
All right. I'll throw Austin Dean in there. Don't mind him whatsoever. Pretty much. You mentioned Robles already. Juan Soto. Did you mention Palka? I think Daniel Palka is a great play here. Castellanos is fine. I think that'll about do it. McKinney is cheap. Just trying to see if there's anyone else, but I think that's about it. Brinson's really far down there in terms of price too, batting sixth. I don't think Brinson's a terrible play either. So
No, I mean my tournament projections, I actually have him as my. He's tied with like Kristen Stewart and Bonifacio in point per dollar as like my
Brinson
second
is
highest point per dollar. Yeah, it's like Billy McKinney's my number one, and then Stewart, Bonifacio, Brinson.
okay. Yeah, pretty sensible to me. All right, top stacks, and we'll head out.
Stacking's dumb. But Tampa Bay, the Nats, the White Sox. Yeah.
I mean, pretty sure it won't work, but I'm definitely
Yeah,
warming up to this Miami stack here. I can't help but have some interest just based on ownership and
yeah,
Cody Reed's ownership. So
I like
yeah,
it. I like their lineup a lot too.
so do I. It just
Might
fits
actually
so
cut. I
easily
might
with
cut
Max
back on Cody
Scherzer.
Reed a
Like
little bit.
I have a Miami stack with Scherzer, and then I have Rendon and a couple other Washington bats too. So it just shows you that there's a lot of wiggle room there and a lot of space to do what you want. I just wish O'Brien or Zimmerman had multi-position eligibility so I
Yeah.
could play both in the same lineup.
I might cut Reed back a little bit and kind of just have an even amount of like him and Brigham instead of making him my highest owned. Just because, like, if you had to choose the worst possible lineup for him to face, it's this one, I think.
Yeah, it kind of is. And who would have thought? Because when do the Marlins ever run out of lineup that could be the worst possible for anyone other than themselves?
And not even in terms of the power upside. Like Miguel Rojas is hard to strike out. Castro's tough to strike out. Real Muto's tough to strike out. Then you get O'Brien and Brinson, which is nice, but it's just gonna. I think there's a higher than normal chance that this is just a really annoying spot for Reed.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, you still play him. People are still going to play him. Just might not be the best overall spot. Anyway, that'll do it for us. Deeper Dive. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Stick around. Josh and Emac leading you up to lock. And then at 7:00, three fellas talking football. Myself, Ben, and Andrew. You want to stay tuned for that one. Going to have some fun heading into Thursday night football and for Sunday slate. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here. Well, I'll see you back here tonight. And then the rest of us will see you back here tomorrow.